How do you feel about Floyd, though?
Huh?
How do you feel about
Awesome
Floyd?
fighter, great fighter. You know, he's a little too into himself. You know, he should be. I was the same way too, but you have to come to reality some way. You have to bring your head down to God. We're nothing to be fucking arrogant. You expect us to be ignorant and arrogant. Look where we came from.
He's boastful. I think his God is the material things, money, everything like that. I'm pity with him because I want to share the word of God in him if he believes that.
50 wins, 0 defeats. For Floyd Mayweather Jr., that record has become more than a statistic. It has become a defining part of his legacy. The undefeated mark follows him wherever his name is mentioned, serving as a constant reminder of one of the most remarkable careers in boxing history. Yet the real debate has never been about the zero itself. Instead, it centers on what that undefeated record truly represents. Was Mayweather simply the most disciplined and defensively gifted fighter the sport has ever seen? A master strategist who consistently outthought and outperformed his opponents? Or was he the architect of a carefully managed career, one designed to minimize risk and control every possible variable before stepping into the ring? Years after his retirement, that question continues to divide fans and analysts alike. For some, the perfect record is proof of unparalleled greatness. For others, it remains a topic of ongoing discussion about how legacy, timing, and competition should be evaluated in the sport of boxing.
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
He went 10 rounds with the greatest fighter in the last 100 years of boxing.
No, Connor's the beast. Connor's the beast.
Think about no. You're not listening to me. You don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He went 10 rounds, scored punches on the greatest fighter in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Did he do something? Did he accomplish something? A star? See, people ain't looking. People just want to see the black guy beat the white guy. They just want to see it. But look what he had to fight against. And look what he did when he fought against it.
Who do you think wins in a fight, you or Prime Floyd?
Me?
No questions?
Why would you think that I would say Floyd? You know, that's one of my favorite fighters. But yeah, nah.
When people talk about Floyd Mayweather, they rarely start with emotion. They start with control. They talk about the shoulder roll, the subtle step backward, and the perfectly timed counter right hand that lands clean while an opponent punches nothing but air. Mayweather did not overwhelm his opponents with aggression. Instead, he dismantled them piece by piece, methodically, patiently, and with remarkable precision. For many fans from older generations, however, the conversation often sounds different. They grew up watching fighters embrace uncertainty, stepping into dangerous situations where chaos was part of the spectacle. Those champions thrived in unpredictable battles and were willing to take risks in pursuit of victory. With Mayweather, there was rarely chaos. There was structure. There was calculation. There was distance management and tactical control. Yet when former champions and boxing legends discuss Floyd Mayweather, their tone often changes. Some pause before answering. Others nod with reluctant admiration. A few even smile quietly, as though they recognize something that many casual fans overlook. Because when the sport's greatest figures speak about Mayweather, they rarely focus on excitement alone. They talk about discipline. They talk about precision. They talk about a fighter who transformed the boxing ring into a chessboard and consistently made the smartest move available. That may be where the true story of Floyd Mayweather begins. His greatness was not built on reckless exchanges or dramatic comebacks. It was built on mastery of the fundamentals and an ability to make elite opponents look ordinary. One of the clearest examples came during his fight with Canelo Alvarez. There were moments when Mayweather stood directly in front of a younger, powerful Canelo, yet Canelo repeatedly struggled to land clean shots. To many observers, it was more than a dominant performance. It was a boxing lesson at the highest level. Some analysts believe that experience played a major role in Canelo's development, forcing him to improve his head movement, timing, and overall understanding of the sport after facing one of the most technically gifted fighters of his era.
I mean, when he fought Canelo and he's like standing right in front of Canelo and Canelo's just whiffing, it was a life lesson. And then you look at how good Canelo's head movement got after that fight when he realized it. I mean, my God, when he fought Danny Jacobs and Canelo's just standing right in front of him, bobbing and weaving. That's all what he learned from fighting Floyd.
I was surprised about his power. When you attack Floyd, he has a way of making you run into it and you feel the power like a collision. But when you kind of box away from him, yes, he has power, but not like he does when you're trying to attack him. He's not weak. He's strong. Like I say, he trains hard and he does all the things you're supposed to do as a fighter or as a champion to be the best.
When former champions talk about Floyd Mayweather, the first word is rarely love. It is rarely excitement. More often than not, it is respect, and sometimes that respect comes with a sense of reluctance. Across multiple generations, fighters known for their aggression, toughness, and willingness to take risks have acknowledged something undeniable about Mayweather's abilities. They describe him as one of the hardest fighters to hit cleanly. They speak about his understanding of distance, timing, and positioning as being on a level few boxers have ever achieved. Some even suggest that he seemed to anticipate punches before they were thrown. This kind of praise is not usually emotional. It is technical. It comes from people who understand the sport at its deepest levels. Former champions often point to Mayweather's defensive mastery, recognizing the shoulder roll not as a gimmick, but as a highly disciplined system refined through years of repetition, precision, and timing. They highlight the subtle pivots, the pull counters, and the way he repeatedly forced opponents to reset their rhythm and rethink their approach. To them, it was not flashy, it was efficient. Others have offered a more balanced perspective. While acknowledging Mayweather's exceptional skill, they have also raised questions about certain aspects of his career, including matchmaking decisions, weight stipulations, and the timing of specific fights. These discussions remain part of the broader debate surrounding his legacy. Yet even among critics, there is often an important concession. Floyd Mayweather won, and he won convincingly. Former champions rarely describe his success as the product of luck, nor do they dismiss his accomplishments outright. Instead, they analyze the details. They break down the angles, the defensive reactions, the ring IQ, and the strategic decisions that defined his career. What emerges from those conversations is a shared understanding that Mayweather's achievements were not accidental. Whether admired or questioned, his success was built on a level of technical mastery that demanded recognition from the very people who understood boxing best.
If I take Floyd Mayweather in his absolute prime, and I take Manny Pacquiao in his absolute prime,
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd still beats him.
Floyd beat everybody.
You don't believe there's a guy at 140, 147 in the history of boxing that could have beat Floyd in his prime?
It'd be tough. Floyd, man, that boy, man, that's the GOAT, man. That boy bad.
What makes it, I mean, what, because, and I told people this, I said, look at Floyd. I said, Floyd, it's not that he trains, I mean, it's his life. And from the very beginning, he said, I want to be the.
There is also a noticeable pattern in the way former opponents and champions describe their experiences against Floyd Mayweather. Rarely do they talk about being physically overwhelmed. Instead, they speak about being outthought. They remember the frustration more than the punishment. They recall the punches they missed far more vividly than the punches they landed. It was a different kind of defeat, one that lingered long after the final bell. Not because of physical damage, but because it exposed mistakes, weaknesses, and limitations that many fighters had never been forced to confront before. Facing Mayweather often felt less like a fight, and more like a strategic puzzle that became increasingly difficult to solve with every passing round. As a result, the collective opinion of Mayweather occupies a unique space within boxing history. He may not be the most universally loved champion, nor does he inspire nostalgia in the same way as some of the sport's most celebrated warriors. His style was often based on control rather than chaos, precision rather than spectacle. Yet whenever the conversation shifts to pure skill, discipline, and technical excellence, the tone inevitably changes. Even those who criticize his approach usually stop short of questioning his ability. Because regardless of where people stand on the debates surrounding his career, few can deny the level of mastery he displayed inside the ring. That is why Floyd Mayweather remains one of boxing's most discussed and divisive figures. Opinions may differ on his style, his choices, or his legacy, but when the subject is technical brilliance, even his critics are often forced to acknowledge the extraordinary level at which he operated.
If you could have fought any fighter in your life, any weight, any era, who would you have picked that you would have liked to fight the most?
Floyd Mayweather.
I love it. Why?
Huh?
You want to knock him out?
Well, I would love him before, and I wish he was my way.
All right, interesting answer.
If Conor McGregor was going to fight Floyd Mayweather in MMA, it is as close to 100% as anything ever gets ever. Because if you think Floyd is all of a sudden going to become this one-punch destroyer. If you think that's going to happen out of nowhere, you're crazy. What's going to happen is he's probably going to punch Conor in the face a couple of times. It's probably going to suck, but Conor's going to get a hold of him. And then he's going to be like a baby. And if that doesn't happen, he'll kick Floyd's legs out from under him. And every time Floyd goes in, front kick to the stomach. Boom, front kick to the stomach. Boom, front kick to the stomach. How many of those?
Floyd Mayweather never relied on momentum alone. He relied on structure. What separated him from many champions before him was not just his speed, reflexes, or defensive instincts. It was the system he built around every aspect of competition. His success was rooted in preparation, planning, and an unwavering commitment to controlling as many variables as possible before a fight ever began. From training camp to fight night, every detail was approached with precision. Opponent selection was carefully considered, negotiations were strategic, and preparation was methodical. Very little was left to chance. While many fighters thrived on instinct and spontaneity, Mayweather preferred a framework built on discipline and calculated decision-making. Inside the ring, the pattern was often the same. Early rounds were used to gather information. He studied distance, observed tendencies, analyzed timing, and looked for habits that could be exploited later in the fight. Rather than rushing to dominate, he focused on understanding his opponent first. Once he identified the patterns, the momentum of the contest often shifted in his favor. Mayweather rarely pursued knockouts at all costs. Instead, he pursued control. If an opponent relied heavily on a left hook, he adjusted his positioning and defensive approach. If they charged forward aggressively, he allowed them to expend energy while remaining composed. If they hesitated, he stepped in with precise scoring shots before moving safely out of range. Every action served a purpose. Outside the ropes, that same attention to detail remained evident. Contract terms, weight conditions, ring dimensions, and other logistical factors were all viewed as part of the competitive landscape. To some observers, this approach appeared overly calculated. To others, it reflected a deep understanding of how elite-level competition is won. Regardless of perspective, it consistently reduced uncertainty and maximized his advantages. In previous eras, boxing often celebrated risk-taking. Fighters moved between weight classes without hesitation, accepted late replacements, and competed through difficult circumstances. Mayweather followed a different philosophy. He focused on minimizing unnecessary risks, extending his prime, and preserving the strengths that made him successful. Critics viewed this as caution. Supporters viewed it as mastery. Yet one fact remains difficult to dispute: the approach produced results. Mayweather's undefeated record was not simply the product of talent. It was the result of a fighter who treated every detail as important and every variable as something that could be managed. And that leads to a larger question about the nature of greatness itself. When a champion removes as much chaos as possible from the equation, does he take away some of the drama that fans associate with boxing? Or does he redefine what excellence looks like at the highest level? The answer ultimately depends on how one views the sport. For some, boxing is about risk, uncertainty, and unforgettable battles. For others, it is about skill, strategy, and the pursuit of perfection. Floyd Mayweather's career sits at the center of that debate, ensuring that his legacy will continue to be discussed for years to come.
I got my own fucking defense, man. That's the Mayweather. I got my own style in boxing. That's the Floyd Mayweather style. My dad taught me to shoulder roll. But the thing is this, I don't care who done it first. It's mine because I mastered it. And somebody said, the Philly shell. My thing is this, I love Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, that's the Mayweather defense.
For the fighters who stood across the ring from Floyd Mayweather, the experience was rarely violent in the traditional sense. Instead, it was often described as disorienting. They entered the fight fully aware of what they were facing. They had watched the footage, studied the tactics, and prepared for the shoulder roll, the pull counter, and the pinpoint right hand that had frustrated so many opponents before them. But understanding Mayweather's style on film was very different from experiencing it in real time. Once the opening bell rang, the entire rhythm of the fight seemed to change. The ring felt smaller. The available space disappeared faster. Every mistake carried a greater consequence, and every missed punch seemed to create another opportunity for Mayweather to take control. Opponents often found themselves chasing targets that were no longer there, reaching for openings that vanished before they could be exploited. Round after round, frustration began to replace confidence as Mayweather dictated the pace and forced fighters to compete on his terms rather than their own. What made the challenge so unique was that it rarely felt like being physically overwhelmed. Instead, it felt like being strategically outmaneuvered. Every movement had a purpose, every adjustment was calculated, and every reaction seemed one step ahead of the opponent's intentions. By the time many fighters realized what was happening, they were already falling behind on the scorecards. That ability to control distance, timing, and tempo is what made Floyd Mayweather one of the most difficult fighters in boxing history to solve. His opponents were not simply battling his speed or defense. They were battling a system designed to make every decision feel more difficult than it should have been.
I agree with you so wholeheartedly about appreciation of a real masterful boxer. Like, when I always talk to people about Floyd Mayweather, they talk all this. He does this, he does that, he's got all this money. I go, save all that. Forget about his talking. Watch how that guy fights. He barely gets hit. Man. He's been rocked maybe twice in his whole career. Maidana and Sugar Shane Mosley. Those are the only two. And he wound up winning both those fights. Yeah. He's masterful boxer.
If you don't like Floyd's lifestyle, I don't ascribe to Floyd's lifestyle, but that's not my business. As a fighter, we're going to call this the way we see it. He is arguably one of the greatest of all time. Floyd's doing something and we're not acknowledging it. And it's clear that you don't like him. That's the issue. That if we're talking in the ring, come on, man.
Oscar de la Hoya came into the fight with an aggressive game plan, throwing combinations and applying steady pressure in an effort to dictate the pace. At times, the contest appeared highly competitive, with de la Hoya finding moments of success and forcing exchanges that kept fans engaged. But as the fight progressed, Mayweather's adjustments began to take effect. His timing became sharper, his defensive reads grew more precise, and his counterpunching started landing with increasing accuracy. Without any dramatic momentum shift or explosive turning point, the rounds gradually began to swing in his favor. That was often the hallmark of Floyd Mayweather's style. He did not always overwhelm opponents with power or dramatic knockdowns. Instead, he took control through precision, timing, and tactical adjustments. What looked competitive in one round could quietly become a clear advantage in the next, as Mayweather steadily solved the puzzle in front of him and accumulated points without taking unnecessary risks. Against de la Hoya, the victory was not built on destruction. It was built on control. It was another example of Mayweather's ability to turn small adjustments into decisive advantages, demonstrating why so many opponents found him one of the most difficult fighters in boxing history to overcome.
When you fought Floyd Mayweather at what? You're 23?
23.
That's so fucking young.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I trained so hard, and now obviously I try to beat him because, you know, if you beat him, you want to be the best in the world at 23.
What do you think was so impressive about him?
His experience, he's so smart. He have everything in a fighter, a complete fighter. He don't have power in the punches, but when you that kind of fighter, you don't need it.
You think that was the toughest fight you faced?
No.
What do you think?
I think it's tough fights and difficult fights. That was.
Ricky Hatton entered the ring determined to make the fight physical, fast-paced, and chaotic. Known for his relentless pressure and aggressive style, Hatton attempted to drag Floyd Mayweather into uncomfortable exchanges and force him into a battle fought on emotion rather than strategy. But chaos only works when both fighters are willing to participate. Mayweather refused to do so. Instead of engaging in Hatton's preferred fight, he created angles, controlled distance, and carefully managed every exchange. He remained patient, waiting for mistakes rather than forcing opportunities. When those openings finally appeared, he capitalized with ruthless efficiency, producing a finish that was as decisive as it was calculated. Years later, Manny Pacquiao presented a different challenge altogether. His speed, movement, and unpredictability led many fans and analysts to believe he possessed the style needed to disrupt Mayweather's formula. Expectations were enormous, with many anticipating a dramatic clash between two of the era's biggest stars. Instead, the fight evolved into a tactical battle centered on distance, positioning, and timing. Pacquiao moved constantly, looking for angles and opportunities to launch his attacks. Mayweather responded with adjustments of his own, using footwork, defense, and ring awareness to limit sustained offense and keep the exchanges under control. The result was less explosive than many had imagined, but it reflected the same principle that defined Mayweather's career from beginning to end. While Pacquiao often produced higher activity and bursts of aggression, Mayweather focused on precision, efficiency, and clean scoring shots. In the end, the scorecards favored accuracy over volume, reinforcing the strategic approach that had carried him through an undefeated career.
Mayweather is known for his Philly shell defensive style of fighting, but he has one arm tucked in at his belly and one arm kept up by his ear, and he uses his shoulder to deflect shots. That's what I prepared for, because that's what that's all I had seen of him. And then when I went into the fight in the early rounds, I was whooping him in the early rounds. It was actually, I went back to my corner after the first round and said, this is easy. And then he had to switch up his style. He switched it to that old Mexican boxing style. Put your elbows in tight, you put it just above the forehead and walk forward with heavy pressure. He never fought like that in his entire career, but he was forced to fight that way because he was getting beaten when he was fighting his old way. The approach caught me off guard. I was not prepared for it, and he walked me down and ended up getting the stoppage. Now you've got to respect that, because that's what a crafty veteran can do.
Some great fights never take place, or they take place too late, like Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. They fought too late. I mean, if that fight could have been arranged by Riyadh Season, they probably would have caught them both in their prime, and it would have been chaos.
Yeah, Manny was done before that. It was
and he also had a blown shoulder going into the fight.
Yeah.
He needed shoulder surgery before the fight even started.
Oscar de la Hoya came into the fight with an aggressive game plan, throwing combinations and applying steady pressure in an effort to dictate the pace. At times, the contest appeared highly competitive, with de la Hoya finding moments of success and forcing exchanges that kept fans engaged. But as the fight progressed, Mayweather's adjustments began to take effect. His timing became sharper, his defensive reads grew more precise, and his counterpunching started landing with increasing accuracy. Without any dramatic momentum shift or explosive turning point, the rounds gradually began to swing in his favor. That was often the hallmark of Floyd Mayweather's style. He did not always overwhelm opponents with power or dramatic knockdowns. Instead, he took control through precision, timing, and tactical adjustments. What looked competitive in one round could quietly become a clear advantage in the next, as Mayweather steadily solved the puzzle in front of him and accumulated points without taking unnecessary risks. Against de la Hoya, the victory was not built on destruction. It was built on control. It was another example of Mayweather's ability to turn small adjustments into decisive advantages, demonstrating why so many opponents found him one of the most difficult fighters in boxing history to overcome. Interview 8. Ricky Hatton entered the ring determined to make the fight physical, fast-paced, and chaotic. Known for his relentless pressure and aggressive style, Hatton attempted to drag Floyd Mayweather into uncomfortable exchanges and force him into a battle fought on emotion rather than strategy. But chaos only works when both fighters are willing to participate. Mayweather refused to do so. Instead of engaging in Hatton's preferred fight, he created angles, controlled distance, and carefully managed every exchange. He remained patient, waiting for mistakes rather than forcing opportunities. When those openings finally appeared, he capitalized with ruthless efficiency, producing a finish that was as decisive as it was calculated. Years later, Manny Pacquiao presented a different challenge altogether. His speed, movement, and unpredictability led many fans and analysts to believe he possessed the style needed to disrupt Mayweather's formula. Expectations were enormous, with many anticipating a dramatic clash between two of the era's biggest stars. Instead, the fight evolved into a tactical battle centered on distance, positioning, and timing. Pacquiao moved constantly, looking for angles and opportunities to launch his attacks. Mayweather responded with adjustments of his own, using footwork, defense, and ring awareness to limit sustained offense and keep the exchanges under control. The result was less explosive than many had imagined, but it reflected the same principle that defined Mayweather's career from beginning to end. While Pacquiao often produced higher activity and bursts of aggression, Mayweather focused on precision, efficiency, and clean scoring shots. In the end, the scorecards favored accuracy over volume, reinforcing the strategic approach that had carried him through an undefeated career. Interview 9. A similar theme often emerges when former opponents reflect on their experiences against Floyd Mayweather. Rarely do they describe being overwhelmed by sheer power or physical force. Instead, they talk about uncertainty. They talk about hesitation slowly creeping into their decision-making as the fight progressed. Many recall throwing combinations that seemed destined to land, only to find themselves punching at empty space. Others remember moments when they believed they had finally figured out the puzzle, only to discover that Mayweather had already adjusted and moved on to something different by the next round. That was the challenge of facing Mayweather. Success required more than toughness, determination, or courage. It demanded the ability to solve a constantly evolving problem while under intense pressure. Every round presented new variables, and every adjustment required an immediate response. For most opponents, Finding the answer before the fight slipped away proved nearly impossible. This is the subtle impact Mayweather left on many of his rivals. He did not always leave behind dramatic knockouts or broken opponents. Instead, he left something less visible but equally significant, a lasting realization that they had been strategically outmaneuvered. By the end of the night, many fighters walked away with the same conclusion. They had not simply been beaten by a talented boxer. They had been managed, controlled, and neutralized by a system built on discipline, precision, and the relentless pursuit of minimizing mistakes. That ability to remove openings and limit opportunities became one of the defining characteristics of Floyd Mayweather's career, and a major reason why his legacy remains such a significant topic of discussion in boxing today. Interview 10. If Floyd Mayweather's technique earned respect, his personality created division. He understood something that many champions never fully embraced. In modern boxing, perception is part of the competition. Rather than allowing the public to define him, Mayweather built his own image and controlled the narrative from the start. The transformation from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather was no accident. It was a carefully crafted evolution that combined elite athletic discipline with powerful branding. He showcased wealth, embraced criticism, and spoke with unwavering confidence. To some, it came across as arrogance. To others, it was a brilliant marketing strategy. Regardless of opinion, it kept the spotlight firmly fixed on him. Mayweather understood the difference between confidence and provocation, and often blurred the line intentionally. He did not seek universal approval. Instead, he recognized that being disliked was often better for business than being ignored. By embracing the role of boxing's villain, he ensured that every fight carried emotional stakes. Fans tuned in either to witness his brilliance or to see someone finally defeat him. That divide followed him throughout his career. Some crowds booed him before the opening bell, while others watched with admiration for his technical mastery. Analysts debated not only where he ranked among the greats, but also how he achieved his success. Was he avoiding danger, or was he simply redefining how elite fighters manage risk? Unlike figures such as Muhammad Ali, whose charisma often softened controversy with humor and charm, Mayweather projected a colder, more business-oriented image. He openly discussed revenue, negotiations, and financial success with the same enthusiasm that others reserved for championships. For traditional boxing fans, that approach sometimes felt at odds with the sport's long-standing narratives of struggle and sacrifice. For others, it represented the evolution of a modern athlete taking control of his career. As a result, admiration for Mayweather's abilities came easily. Personal affection was far more complicated. Yet even those who disliked the persona continued to watch, because beneath the marketing was a fighter whose execution remained disciplined, consistent, and remarkably effective.